Today, we gather in solemn reflection on the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade, a day when humanity pauses to remember millions of women, men, and children whose lives were stolen, whose dignity was denied, and whose humanity was questioned, yet whose resilience reshaped the moral arc of our shared history.
The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/80/L48 entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as a gravest crime against humanity. A recorded vote has been requested. We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of the draft resolution A/80/L48, please signify. Those against and those in abstention.
The Assembly is now voting on draft resolution A/80/L48 entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. Will all delegations confirm that the votes are accurately reflected on the screen? Please lock the machine.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 123, against 3, abstentions 52. Therefore, draft resolution A/80/L48 is adopted. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States remains steadfast in its opposition and condemnation of historic wrongs that resulted from the transatlantic slave trade, the trans-Saharan slave trade, and all other forms of slavery. We remain committed to the acknowledgement that these historical wrongs. Despite this, the United States observes that the text of this resolution remains highly problematic in countless respects. Consequently, the United States cannot support the adoption of this resolution. We regret that the United States must once again remind this body that the United Nations exists to maintain international peace and security. It was not founded to advance narrow, specific interests and agendas, to establish niche international days, or to create new costly meeting and reporting mandates. This resolution does all three. The United States has defined long-standing objectives to the framing of reparatory justice and the duty of reparation for historical wrongs. While we acknowledge the horrors of the past, we do not accept this resolution's assertion that historical facts from the 15th through 19th century constitute violations of jus cogens, as the term is understood in contemporary international law. The United States also does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred. In addition to its obvious legal problems, this resolution is also unclear as to who the recipients of reparatory justice would be. The drafters and supporters of this resolution seem to believe it is them. The United States strongly objects to the cynical usage of historical wrongs as a leverage point in an attempt to reallocate modern resources to people and nations who are distantly related to the historical victims. As stated at the outset of these negotiations, the United States also strongly objects to the resolution's attempt to rank crimes against humanity in any type of hierarchy. The assertion that some crimes against humanity are less severe than others objectively diminishes the suffering of countless victims and survivors of other atrocities throughout history. This is not a competition. This attempted ranking is also simply incorrect as a matter of law. The United States would also like to express disappointment in the arbitrary historical perspective of the text. Trafficking in African slaves began long before the 15th century and sadly continued even after the 19th. These dates were clearly selected for political reasons rather than historical accuracy. All trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans deserve to be condemned, not merely the political expedient. Also, there are some fake news articles suggesting that the sponsors of this resolution called into question President Trump's support of the Black community. We reject any such suggestions. Indeed, President Trump has done more for Black Americans than any other president and enjoyed historic support from the Black community in the 2024 election. He is working tirelessly to deliver for them and make our country greater than ever. Finally, we must express our deep disappointment regarding the process that led to this text. Throughout drafting, the United States and other delegations offered constructive contributions aimed at aligning the text with the established international legal frameworks. These contributions were ignored. For these reasons, the United States will vote no on this resolution. Thank you.
Some of the key reasons raised by the United States for which reason they are abstaining is the lack of clarity on who is the recipient of the reparatory justice. What is your response to that?
That is surprising because we have, in this resolution, talked about frameworks which will put in place that will take care of the consequences. We all know that the consequences of the transatlantic slave trade has been the lack of opportunity, discrimination, the degradation of people of color. So we have said, let's have frameworks that will serve as endowment funds to support education, to support empowerment, to support skills training, capital for entrepreneurs, and all of that. And we have made clear that African leaders or Caribbean leaders are not looking for money. It goes against our conscience to seek to profit from this. We don't want any payments made to us directly. We are talking about courses to deal with the structural inequalities. And we are also talking about the return of artifacts to the continent. It's all in the resolution. There are thousands of artifacts from Egypt all the way to the Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana. We have outlined what must be done and to whom these redress should be addressed to. So again, it is totally wrong for a claim to be made that there is no clarity about who benefits from reparatory justice.
Did you have, in this process, did you have any contact with African-American leaders here in this country, especially in Congress? Did you have any contact?
Yes, we did. I personally met with the Congressional Black Caucus. I met with the NAACP. I met with the NAN of which is led by Reverend Al Sharpton, and I am delighted to note that following our meetings, they all publicly endorsed this draft resolution. The Congressional Black Caucus actually wrote to the U.S. ambassador here to make sure that he votes in favor of this resolution. There was also a statement of endorsement yesterday from NAACP, and I also note that a lot of black members of parliament, particularly in the House of Commons, the MP Belle Ribeiro, she has also done a phenomenal job in mobilizing the House of Commons in support of this resolution. So we've had a very broad-based coalition, and we thank them very much for the support, the pressure that they all brought to bear. That is what has culminated in this victory. So it's a collective victory, and collectively we must all take credit for this victory.